So I don't believe it's illegal. Again, foreign student visas are a privilege, not an entitlement. In particular, students cannot enter the United States if they provide support for designated terrorist organizations. They wouldn't be allowed to enter the United States. The Trump administration wants to remove students who've provided support to designated terrorist organizations like Hamas, and they want to be able to know which students have done that. So they want access to disciplinary records and to videos of protests. I think the Trump administration is trying to remind elite institutions in the United States that they are the beneficiaries of very large subsidies from taxpayers. And so they do have to serve American interests. They are not global institutions, or if they wish to be global institutions, then they have to give up access to very large taxpayer subsidies. Open discussion is a very important part of a quality education, and we do want a free exchange of ideas. But we want a proper intellectual mix. We want people with a variety of viewpoints in these institutions so that the education can be rigorous and diverse. And the problem is that when you bring in, half of your students from overseas, then you begin to stop actually representing American perspectives in those discussions. I think the Trump administration is demonstrating that they're going to prevail in this fight with Harvard. I know that people think Harvard has over $50 billion in endowment and they're, have this status and this history. That's all true, but the federal government is bigger and richer and will prevail here in this fight. And I think Harvard understands that. And really all that they're doing is positioning for a better deal. And so the litigation that Harvard has been pursuing is just to try to get a better agreement with the administration. And I suspect that's ultimately where we're going to end up. There will be an agreement between Harvard and the Trump administration, and it will be a reasonable deal that will allow Harvard to move forward and offer a quality education. So none of this is catastrophic. It is just a fight for positioning for a better deal for each side.
The Trump administration's imposition of a ban on Harvard accepting and keeping overseas students is absolutely enormous attack, both on Harvard and on academic independence and integrity. In terms of the institution, Harvard is a university of something like a bit over 20,000 students, I think 22,000 or so. And about 6,000 to 7,000 of them are overseas students. It means nearly a third of Harvard's students would suddenly face the question of whether they would be able to stay on at Harvard. And of course, the impact on Harvard's finance would be pretty devastating. And that is absolutely intentional. And the message was also sent that other academic institutions should look at Harvard and therefore behave, in quotation marks, in accordance with what the administration wishes. So you can't really have a more blatant assault on academic independence and academic integrity. Well, what Harvard is facing is nearly existential. And therefore, I cannot see any other option but for Harvard to fight back and challenge it in the courts, and potentially asking for an injunction to stop the order from the administration, at least until the case has been heard and ruled by the US courts system. The alternative is to completely cave in which case it really would have very salutary effect on the entire US higher education sector, and it would also cause universities in other democracies to be very concerned. If something like that can happen in the United States, then we can no longer be complacent to think that, oh, it just can't happen to us. The United States is still a country where the rule of law prevails. There is the recourse for Harvard to the US court system, the judicial system, and it is very, very likely that they will succeed in getting an injunction against the order of the Trump administration. So I would not expect the overwhelming majority of Harvard students already in place trying to move to another institution. Where I think you will have more of an impact will be the students who are in the process of being recruited for the coming academic year. And you will have students who are admitted by Harvard, whether at the undergraduate level or at the postgraduate level, who would also have offers from other very, very good universities. And there is a risk that a good percentage of them may decide that instead of going to Harvard, they will go to one of Harvard's rivals, which can be, and more likely than not, located in the United States itself.
Ever since I was a kid, Harvard has represented, the sort of like the epitome of higher education globally, right? The name, the academic freedom and, like the meritocracy there is just absolutely second to none. So that kind of planted the seed. It's a great environment there. Definitely very inspiring. I know the moment you step on, Harvard Square, it's, truly magical, right? Like that experience, that moment is very unforgettable. I just couldn't believe it because I thought, the administration and Harvard had been like back and forth for the last couple of months, right, on various issues and pulling funding and stuff, which is already very painful for Harvard. But I thought that was the maximum pressure that the administration was able to put on Harvard. I mean, like as a member of the Harvard community, people are very proud of, Harvard being able to stand firm, right? Compared to Columbia, for instance, which already kind of caved to the requests. But then I guess today kind of really fundamentally reset people's belief, in how far the administration could go. So basically it's a mixture of like shock then to kind of just, devastation, like frustration and then uncertainty, anxiety, it's a combination of all of those feelings, I would say, among students in the community right now. I think the Trump administration knows very well, what international students mean to the US, right? Especially, these folks are legal, I guess non-immigrants here, they contribute, more than 40 billion dollars a year in economic benefit, right? And then they kind of really feel the talent pool of the US, right? Especially in AI, in many other critical sectors. So I don't think that the administration is ignorant of that. The stakes are too high, right? Like you don't want to just show the moral support and then kind of deal with like 10,000 people or many more because it impacts people who are working as well on OPT and all of that. So you're dealing with tens of thousands of people, and then the consequences. So I'm hoping that this thing will stop at Harvard and hopefully kind of resolve amicably, as opposed to kind of like spreading all over the Ivy League or all of the top institutions in the country. Yeah. End of the day, right, Harvard, like you cannot physically be in the US, but it doesn't mean that you cannot keep learning, right? So if I were Harvard and I can't get this resolved, I would just like continue to provide education to students remotely if they don't want to drop out, right? If some people want to drop out, then it, it's understandable, but I mean the education will have to continue. This kind of would be similar to the COVID era, right? So just continue. And some people might choose to transfer, which could also work, right? Or some people might choose to defer for a year. That could also work. Take a leave of absence and and come back once this is resolved in a year or 2 years, however long. So I do think that there are, a few options that students can really take. Harvard has not done anything wrong, right? So, and Harvard's given students a lot of care and freedom and a lot of things. So I think that obviously the tension between the government and institution is one story, but as a student of Harvard, I feel very supported and protected by the institution. Yeah.